Donor-advised funds have grown in popularity in recent years as a go-to option for charitable-minded individuals who are looking to capture preferential tax treatment for their charitable contributions. This is the first of a two-part video series on donor-advised funds, or DAFs. The acronym is DAF. I'll probably use that a lot throughout the course of these two videos. Otherwise, I'd be repeatedly saying donor-advised funds. So for the sake of brevity, you can prepare yourself for that. In the first video, we're going to talk about the basics, just break things down a little bit. And then in the second video, we'll get a lot more granular. DAFs are offered in several different forms. Some funds are offered through large investment companies like Fidelity, Schwab, and Vanguard. These are called sponsoring organizations. To show how rapidly these funds are growing in popularity, according to the Boston Globe, in 2023, Fidelity Charitable, which is the largest sponsoring organization in the country, manages over $48 billion. The sponsoring organizations allow you to create, or the donor to create, their own fund, which is then administered and managed by the organization. Some of the sponsors are called single-issue charities, like universities, religious organizations, or other organizations with a singular mission and focus. There are also geographic DAFs based around community interest, and they can be used to aggregate funds for a particular purpose, including things like memorial funds or really any other charitable cause. Under current tax law, DAFs are considered public charities, and therefore they receive more favorable tax treatment compared to contributions to private foundations. And it's worth taking a moment to break down the basic difference between a public charity and a private foundation. So let's take a look directly at the IRS website for guidance. Every exempt charitable organization is classified as either a public charity or a private foundation. Generally, organizations that are classified as public charities are those that, one, are churches, hospitals, qualified medical research organizations affiliated with hospitals, schools, colleges, and universities. Two, have an active program of fundraising and receive contributions from many sources, including the general public, government agencies, corporations, private foundations, or other public charities. Number three, receive income from the conduct of activities in furtherance of the organization's exempt purposes. Or number four, actively function in a supporting relationship to one or more existing public charities. Private foundations, in contrast, typically have a single major source of funding, usually gifts from one family or corporation rather than funding from many sources. And most have, as their primary activity, the making of grants to other charitable organizations and to individuals rather than the direct operation of charitable programs. For the vast majority of donors making charitable contributions, they are donating to public charities. Less frequent are contributions that are made to private foundations, which are generally set up as a family foundation. So think the Ford Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation. Many of us are probably not making contributions to these types of foundations, and donations to them generally receive less favorable tax treatment. For the purposes of this video, we're going to be focusing primarily on charitable deductions for contributions to public charities, specifically through the use of a DAF as a vehicle for making contributions. So let's talk about the basic idea and the general advantages of a DAF. The general concept is that you get an immediate tax deduction on the entire amount contributed into the DAF in a single taxable year. But you do not need to decide immediately when the contribution is made to which charity or charities you want to donate. The donor can decide or recommend which charities to support over a long period of time. So distributions are made to the charities and can be spread out over a period of years. The funds can be set up very quickly, and the setup cost and administrative costs associated with a DAF, especially when compared to setting up and operating a private foundation, are very low. Another advantage is that they can simplify record keeping for the donor. If you're the kind of person who likes to disperse funds with regularity and among many different charities, it can be a chore to keep records of all of your charitable contributions. With a DAF, all of the records are maintained for you by the sponsoring organization. So that takes that added burden of keeping records. In this case, all of those records are kept directly through the sponsoring organization. Also, for the most part, contributions receive a larger tax deduction compared to contributions to a private foundation. And finally, the last advantage that we'll talk about is that donors can remain anonymous. Before we wrap up this video, we talked about the advantages. In the next video, we'll talk about disadvantages of donor advised funds. We'll talk about some criticism, and we'll talk about some more detail, get a little bit more granular in how these things are actually used. But I just want to make a point. If you have not watched the last video on bunching, really understanding the concept of bunching in conjunction with a donor advised fund will really start to round out how they can be used and why they are so attractive to people. So if you remember in the last video, the concept of bunching is to get you over the hump of the standard deduction into the world of itemized deductions so that you can really start to see the preferential tax treatment of your charitable contributions. Go back, check out that video. But the reason these two vehicles or these two concepts can be used together and why they're so attractive to people is because one of the disadvantages of bunching is that you lose the ability to make contributions at regular intervals, which can be a real goal for a lot of people. So the donor advised fund allows you to use the concept of bunching and then continue to make regular distributions to the charities of your choosing at whatever intervals you want. So thank you for joining me in this video. We'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. And if you like this content, please let me know, consider subscribing, and we'll see you in the next follow-up video.